So welcome back. Welcome back to this lab on writing support. What we'll discuss today are a set of challenges that people have with writing. And I really mean it in a very, very broad way. And some people were asking a little bit more about this, but I really mean it in a very broad way. And I want it to be kind of open-ended and organically going from one thing to the other. And by the way, Grace, I see that you have two
Yeah,
devices
I
connected.
tried
Yep.
another way. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and
Oh,
clear.
wow, this one works. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
to take off my other one then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Mhm. So there's a few new people. So I would like to start with them one by one. And actually, I would say most of you are new from this time, apart from I'd say Norm, Roberta, and James. So I'll go one by one, if you don't mind. Caroline, if you could say a few words about your correct affiliation.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Very well.
Okay, that's great. So I work at McGill and I teach at the McGill Writing Center. My field is second language education, and I teach academic English, spoken language and written language. Yeah, I guess that's everything.
Absolutely nice. Dorothy? We've spoken on the phone a little bit, and I think one thing, you're an occupational therapist, right? So that's something. My mother was actually an occupational therapist for all her career. So we can't hear you now. You're still muted. Can I unmute you? I know that some other people know you. Oh, there you go. Hello?
I hate to add a thing, but when I had my problem on this interface, right under your picture, you're the big picture, Alex. There's a little symbol that shows a mute that's in orange. And if you click on it, that opens your mic.
Okay. Dorothy? Maybe we'll come back. Gabe, I know that you'll have to go, so and actually your hand was up, so I'll give you a chance to say a few words. And we're discussing not only challenges but ways that technology might not help. So if you can say a few words about that, and then you're off the hook.
Oh, well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Uh, yes, guys. So hi, I'm the department coordinator of the humanities department at Champlain College, St. Lambert. And Norm and I have been working together now for several years on a project that's called newsactivist.com. I think he spoke about it last week at some points, and it is a writing tool. And the way he and I connected was around how I developed this website in order to give my students a way to give an authentic academic writing environment where they could be communicating with people around the world, ideally. And it ended up, Norm and I met through second language education, and he's been a real support in folding my project into some projects that are with the second language community. So I've had a pretty unique experience as a humanities teacher using the site for my classes, but also supporting some teachers across the réseau in using the site in second language environments. And so I've seen some of the real smooth workflow with native language speakers using this site, and them having a chance to have a feel of a social network environment and a safe environment to write about real world issues for my humanities courses. And it really pushes their writing in a great way. But I've also seen, you mentioned some of the barriers, some of the challenges that are arrived at with technology that's unique to having a second language community arriving to a website where instructions and styles may be not in their first language. So I guess as you mentioned, I'm only here for the first half maybe of this lab, but maybe it'll come back up. I'll be around long enough to talk a little bit about some of those experiences of second language teachers and using this technology that really is intended for pretty high level writing. And so, yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming. And part of the challenges, and I guess it's already said, but not everyone understands that being a second language speaker is a very big hurdle. It's one of those challenges that people don't think about nearly enough or nearly in the most appropriate way. So, Grace, could you say a few words?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so my name is Grace Duval, and I'm a product marketing manager at Nuance Communications. And I don't know if people have heard of Nuance, but I actually work for the Dragon Naturally Speaking division. I am basically product marketing for that division. And again, if you have not heard of Dragon, Dragon is a speech recognition dictation product for the PC and Mac. And how it relates to the topics today is that Dragon can help students, especially with their papers and presentations and notes on the PC by dictating into the computer instead of typing. And so, as we know, dictating or speaking is a lot faster and more natural than typing, even if you are a fast typist. And so we do address these challenges. It also helps people think, and also, for people who are have issues with like repetitive stress from typing too much. It also helps students with either physical or learning disabilities, as well as, for instance, like English language learners who are learning, who have a lot easier time speaking than possibly writing.
Absolutely. And in fact, the first time we did talk about providing vocal feedback on students' assignments, sometimes as audio recording that we could give along with the written feedback, and that is pretty useful. And I saw on Nuance, and it's part of the reason I contacted Grace and other people at Nuance, is that I saw on the site some examples of teachers using Nuance and other tools like that, obviously, but Nuance specifically, Dragon naturally speaking, to provide feedback in a way that's a little bit more natural. We talked a little bit about Nick Walker's corrective feedback, and he was talking about the fact that when you provide appropriate feedback, it's also feedback that can be more personal, more the voice of the reader instead of being just very dry, this is incorrect, and things like that. So providing support like that can be pretty useful. So, James?
Yeah.
All right, hello everyone. James Bennett. I'm a former language teacher, English teacher, as a second language students here in Sweden. I also, as an Englishman living in Sweden, I also work in a second language almost constantly. I'm currently working for Urukun Plagiarism Detection System. I've been invited here to participate, partly because of my language teacher background, but also because Urukun's plagiarism detection provides a writing and feedback, in a sense, tool for teachers working at university and the cégep or college levels. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Kim? We haven't tested the microphone before, so maybe. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Kim Larsch, and actually I'm in a couple different roles. I say semi-retired because I do still work part-time occasionally in a school system, but I taught 7th through 12th grade for over 30 years in Mesa, Arizona.
Wow.
And have had quite a bit of experience. My last couple of years in our school district was an educational technology trainer, so I trained the teachers on a variety of, any technology integration. Prior to that, I was pretty much working with 7th through 12th grade students in business and computer courses, integrating English, reading, writing, technology overall. Started also using voice recognition software back in early 2000s and ended up becoming a consultant, training teachers throughout the United States on how to integrate voice recognition software into their programs, and have actually found quite a bit of success, not only personally, but with other teachers on getting students to use the voice technology as an inputting tool. A lot of times people were thinking it was only for those that were disabled, but that's not true at all. Uh, it worked with low-level learners, very high achievers. I had experience working with it on with special education students as far as a disability, but also with high-level college-bound students, increasing their overall productivity. It is a different tool. We are used to thinking in writing versus talking in writing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a skill that needs to be taught in as voice recognition is being inputted.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it already introduces some topics that we'll certainly discuss, including what counts as a disability and should we really talk about disabilities? I think there's some controversy or whatever we might call it.
True.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
No,
I found that really any student, no matter what age, can benefit if you find out what it is that they're needing to increase their skills on.
Okay. Norm?
I'm on.
Yeah.
Can you?
Absolutely.
I guess what's interesting is, okay, download the WebEx app. I went to another tab. Oh, here I am. I'm good.
We can see you. We can hear you.
Good. This is the second webinar that I've been in, and I guess my cred is I started actually as an architecture teacher in French, and then wound up teaching English as a second language, which I've done for about the last 20 years. And 9 years ago, wound up being effectively a journalist for an organization called ProfWeb here in Quebec that charts the use of technology within the sort of junior college level or CEGEP level instruction, and wrote a lot of stories about individual teachers using technology to further all sorts of things, but certainly including student writing skills. And as Gabe sort of discussed, I wound up covering Gabe as part of a story. And when I applied for a grant on my own, an experimental grant, wound up sort of saying to Gabe, well, you should become part of this. And we wound up developing this website. And what I've been doing this year, although I'm largely retired, what I've been doing this year, which I find absolutely fascinating, is working from the other side of the website, trying to look at how students perceive the website in order to begin producing. In other words, I'm not looking at using the technology in teaching because I'm not a teacher anymore, but I'm looking at how do you get a student who certainly is a second language student is insecure at the beginning, and how do you give that student an environment where they gain the confidence and they gain the ease of starting to use something and getting them to the point where they're getting positive feedback and are encouraged to go further and learn.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And a little bit like Kim, I guess, that retirement is not really an option. Like, as we kind of say, it's a little bit like for scouts. Once you're a scout, you're always a scout. Once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher, right?
It's a hopeless addiction.
Well, yeah, it's a occupational hazard, something like that.
Yeah.
Roberta?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Not very loud, though. Oh, not anymore. You're muted now. There we go.
Is that, I'm on now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Just to give a little background, currently I'm working on a collaborative project between 4 CEGEPs in Montreal and McGill on Universal Design for Learning and the creation of a toolkit to support faculty to integrate Universal Design for Learning into their pedagogy. And just if I could just mention my interest in supporting writing challenges would come through the lens of Universal Design for Learning, which would mean that
we'd be looking at tools, techniques, and or technology that would be ranging from very low-tech solutions to high-tech solutions for all students. And as Grace was mentioning, something like Dragon or speech to text is something that's useful for many different types of students, and not only students with disabilities. So I'll get into probably a few more things as we go along. I'll just also mention I'm a course instructor at both CEGEP, LaSalle College, and at McGill.
Excellent. So, Tim, now I know you can hear us, so we can probably hear you. I know Tim, Wilma, and Jen are all at the same place, but on different machines. So maybe, Tim, if you can go first.
Sure. I think we're just introducing ourselves. I missed the question. Okay, great. Sorry, my camera's not working, but my name's Tim Comerford. I work at Vanier College in the Pedagogical Development Office, and I also teach in the Special Care Counseling Department. And I suppose we're talking about our interest in supporting writing challenges, so that sort of comes from both sides of the coin, how to support students in terms of when they're creating or when they're writing, and then how do you make sure that your assessment is actually assessing their writing skills as well as their knowledge. And then from the standpoint of supporting teachers who have students with special needs, like Roberta said, trying to find a UDL standpoint for that. And then also if teachers aren't fully implementing UDL, how do we provide more individual supports?
Absolutely. Wilma, if you can say a few words about the PDO. Yep.
Wilma Brown from Vanier College, the PDO, Pedagogical Development Area, Development Department at Vanier. So I'm the coordinator here. Just this morning, we've been working on a policy for language proficiency across the curriculum as an essential skill, and also I think for many of the colleges it's already a part of a policy that clearly indicates language that should be assessed in written work and or oral presentations. So we're in the process of revising our student proficiency in the language of instruction, which in our case is English. So yes, we see the importance of language with our students and certainly with our teachers in how can we help our teachers help our students with their language literacy skills. So it's an ongoing, and will be, I guess, forever, which is fine. It's an ongoing challenge and something that we need to keep in mind as we look at written work, as we remind people about the importance of editing written work, like get it down first and then get it right, or improve it at least. So all across our college and definitely within the Pedagogical Development Office, literacy skills are very essential and important to us.
Absolutely. And I know that Jen works with you. Maybe, Jen, you could say a few words?
Okay, so hopefully you can hear. Okay, good. My mic. This is a new mic that I had to install, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I'm not exactly certain if your question is about like the specific writing challenges that we want to address, or just more general.
Not yet. Just about your role.
Okay, so my role is I have sort of two roles. I work in the PDO as well with the two people you just met. I focus particularly on technology and teaching. But we cover all kinds of other stuff as well. And then I also work as a humanities teacher in content. And obviously, I consider writing an important part of my students' ability to express their critical thinking. So I think it's and students often struggle with the actual writing part. Like they might be perfectly capable of understanding the material, but they can't actually always express it as clearly as one would hope. So that's a concern of mine.
Absolutely. It's a big concern. And by the way, for the the story itself, just so you know, part of the reason I wanted to create this lab, part of the inspiration for this lab, is in fact the whole issue of language of instruction, as it was discussed at Vanier. So that was something that was pretty interesting for me. And I know that Mary, you work specifically on this, right? On a project to consult teachers about this. Maybe you could say a few words about this. And as always, it's always an issue of whether you're muted or not. So you're muted so far. Yeah, there we go.
Am I on now?
Yes,
Can anybody hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yes, so I'm also working with Jen on what we call here at Vanier the LCAD committee, so language and communication across the disciplines. And our mission is to help teachers, help students to be more proficient in those key skills. And writing is definitely one that students and teachers both identify as a challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we'll talk about the specific challenges in just a minute. I just want to finish up this going around the table. I know it's a little bit, it's a long time to spend on this, but it's interesting to see the diversity, even though there's quite a few people from Vanier, but there's still a diversity of perspectives. So Andrea, I know you just came in, but maybe you could say a few words about your roles. I know you have more than one, but it's also interesting to make connections with other levels of instruction. So in terms of challenges that people have and assistive technology and something like that. So you're muted now, but maybe you can talk and unmute yourself, if you don't mind. If it doesn't work, we can come back later. So, Andrea, you're still muted. And one we didn't hear from is Dorothy. Now I see that apparently you have a microphone or something, but you're muted. Do you want to say a few words? Dorothy?
Okay, again, just to remind Dorothy that you unmute yourself by clicking on the orange square at the right of Alex's picture, because it has the microphone with the bar through it. If it's orange, you are muted. If it's not, it still looks like you're muted, but if it's white, you're not muted. I'll mute myself now.
Yeah. So?
I've got it, actually, if I can.
Nice.
It's Andrea, and I unmuted myself.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I had some technical issues. I'm Andrea Prupis. I'm co-founder of Innovate Educational Consulting, which is an organization that provides consultations to families in assistive technology. I'm also the ALDI coordinator. I work with the MELS on a universal design for learning project for teachers. So through both of those roles, I'm doing a lot with assistive technology for the writing process. And it's a pleasure to join you today.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And something I put in the documentation for the lab is a set of links, especially a few of the links for the, there's a special app for that. Yeah. You wrote quite a few of those, but some of them are very specifically about either writing or something close to that. Right?
I do a lot of, I write quite a bit about apps, but we also cover all kinds of assistive technology. I work with quite a bit with Google Chrome, with all kinds of either apps on that platform. I also work with different devices. So it's really an individualized process in terms of what's best for the student. And actually my focus with through ALDI, through the ministry, is really K-11. But through Innovate, I work with university and CEGEP students as well. So I work with, I guess, a full range of I guess, age ranges and levels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear, Innovate is INOV8-ED, right?
Yeah, INOV8, and I can add links as well to the document.
Yeah. I added a few, including to Innovate itself, but just sometimes when people hear that and they want to know. Martin, would you like to say a few words? You're muted, obviously, but there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, not exactly what's Martin Bertrand. I'm a educational advisor for ICT for the First Nations Education Council. I'm interested into technology, how they can assist how they can assist the kids in their writing motivation, and that's pretty much it. Yes.
Nice, nice. And apart from Dorothy, we went through, and then my colleagues and coordinator, who don't need to speak right now. You know, it's not because I'm I'm avoiding them, but they don't need to. So Dorothy, since there are some issues, feel free to add something in the chat down there to introduce yourself or to communicate, and we might try again later if we think it might work. So that's quite a diverse panel, I would say, and that's one thing I really like about those labs is that we put together people who are unlikely bedfellows, so to speak, who are unlikely collaborators, and I really like that. I think there are connections that are unexpected, and that to me is very, very interesting. So the kind of activity that I would like to propose at first, which is pretty obvious, is to do as on a whiteboard to kind of list some of the challenges that students can have in writing. So this is a whiteboard, and feel free to write on it. As far as I know, you're all able to write on it. And if you can think of any kind of challenge that learners might have with writing, it's a little bit of a brainstorming, but it's exactly the kind of thing that can have very interesting effects, I think. So I see some. There's also, you don't have to write by hand. There's also the AA. Yes, you can write actual text if you want. It tends to be easier. My handwriting is very bad, so I'm guessing it's easier. There you go. So, and part of it, I'll talk at the same time so that it's not dead air, and especially for the recording, I think it will be interesting. But I think it's interesting to think very broadly about those challenges. So motivation was actually one of the first that I heard about, and it might not have been the first one I would have thought about. I don't teach writing, right? I didn't introduce myself, by the way, but because I contacted almost all of you privately. So I'm, learning technology advisor for Vitrine technologie-éducation, and part of my role is actually to do things like these, to organize those labs, which we do several other things. And we're not specialized in writing, obviously. Well, it's not so obvious, but it is obvious to me. And I am very interested in writing and literacy, but the challenges tend to vary quite a bit, I would say. Wow, that's a lot of text at the same time. So, since I'm an ethnographer by trade, I tend to think about literacy in a very specific way. One thing I might add is that writing itself is not necessarily that universally considered in the same way. So writing tends to be very important in a number of places, but not necessarily for the same reasons. It's something to keep in mind. I even added a link to Seymour Papert talking against the 3 R's. You probably know about the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic as being basic literacy, but challenging that notion that those 3 R's are so important because maybe technology will make it so that we don't need to write so much. We don't need to be literate in the same ways. In some ways, you can record yourself for an audio or even video or drawing or things like that. And digital literacy doesn't need to be the same thing as writing. So there's quite a few things on the whiteboard. And I think we can go through some of these. You can raise your hand. And by the way, Gabe, if you can lower your hand because your hand has been up. And yeah, okay, sorry. No, that's fine. So if you can raise your hand or just speak up if you want to discuss some of these, something you notice in this whiteboard. I'll try to increase it.
That's a sort of joke.
Okay.
But I do need to step away, and I wanted
Yep.
to say quickly a few things because it was great hearing those introductions, and this platform is really wonderful. So it's nice having that having that whiteboard there. And I thought I just mentioned that in the third lab I plan to be able to be present throughout. I know we had talked about that, Alex, and I wanted to step in, and it does uh, seem like this is a really wonderful lab, so I'll be looking forward to reviewing the rest of it at a later time. I did want to say hi to Jen as well, and I know that as a humanities teacher as well, it's interesting hearing about the different backgrounds people have. The ideas of universality in terms of these writing issues is something that's really a deep question to think about. But basically, I know Norm is going to be there and be able to share a little more about how this news activist platform is intended to really work on those high-level skills like critical thinking, and to provide a way for students to be getting comfortable talking about issues and dealing with writing and critical thinking while having authentic experiences. And I think it'll be nice to think about how the kinds of learning that happens while engaged in open conversation in the written form can lead to certain learning and teaching moments. And so I'm just sharing my. Oh, you have your plans, Alex. I was going to share the screen, but basically, I think in the end, Norm will be able to speak to what News Activist is, and I think that what I've done is thought mostly about how getting students writing a lot is and getting them motivated to just keep writing, and having that happen in a context where there's communication ongoing with students in different places has been my main solution to getting a lot of these issues addressed by making students feel responsible for what they're writing while having authentic interactions with other students. And as I said, there are challenges in trying to use that particular pedagogy with second language learners. And so in this particular challenges to writing, although it's worked really well for me to have students write in this in the social network setting and have that happen in a safe environment, it's interesting trying to integrate that into second language classrooms. And in Quebec, obviously, that becomes a pretty common occurrence, and something that I think Norm is going to be able to speak to as it's happening in real time with us and multiple colleges using this platform. And on that note, I do want to step away because I need to, but I appreciate this and look forward to seeing the outcomes of these conversations.
Absolutely. And I would have said, feel free to screen share. I put the whiteboard, but it's okay. If you need to leave, you need to leave. I understand that completely. Not a problem.
Sure.
Oh, there we go.
Well, so there it is. And you can see what's happening right at the top is students writing about very deep issues, ethical finance, and it is primarily these humanities-driven content that students are writing about. I think this is great for students who are in second languages, but I think I've learned through these projects that teachers really who are using this kind of platform and are having many second language learners in there, that there's a different level of preparation that's required. And so while this platform seems to be slide into humanities classes very easily and not be demanding on students or teachers and gets them writing, it's a whole different challenge when you're dealing with a second language classroom, and that's something that I think is really interesting to look at.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. So I'm sharing the whiteboard again because there's a lot of material there, and some of it is a little bit harder to see. Oh, there you go. Okay, I think we have the whole whiteboard now. And Kim, you were talking about you had to raise your hand, so you can go ahead.
Yes, I'm not sure I'm seeing the whiteboard right now, but that's okay.
Oh.
I'm seeing the screen that says it's the opening screen.
Oh, okay. But
I could still address some things. I did see the whiteboard.
Okay.
A few things that I was listening to as people were commenting and what I saw on the whiteboard. One of the major things I'm hearing is that we're needing to help students express their thoughts and get their thoughts down quickly, and that there's many barriers that they're facing. Basically, need to help them get it down and then edit, I think was one person's comment. One thing in helping teachers to help students, I'm finding sometimes teachers are more reluctant to use technology than our students are. Sometimes, not for everybody, but technology for students also can be a motivational tool. I do want to speak a little bit to the voice recognition software. I don't know how familiar people are with it, but Dragon Naturally Speaking does include a lot of features that people may not be aware of. With very little training, it can recognize all accents and speech patterns. Now, again, I have only used it with people speaking English, but I have used it in great detail with people speaking English with a second language. Primarily, most of my students were Spanish-speaking students. And it does end up helping take away some of the judgment or fear that students have. Sometimes they're a little bit embarrassed to be speaking because they feel like others are judging them. But when they're just talking and getting their thoughts out on the computer is not judging them. Dragon also includes a speech-to-text feature. Someone had mentioned that in another program, basically where it will read back to them anything that they have said, or they can also highlight any text that's already been written or on a website or whatever, and it will read that text to them. Often what I've had some students do is have text read to them, and then they have read the text so they can hear themselves and see how if there's something that is coming up incorrectly, how they can quickly train the computer to understand that. Let me think what else.
Yeah. Well, that's a start. Yeah.
And it works with all other software programs to input information.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea?
Yes, I hope everyone can hear me. I'm having some bandwidth issues here. I wanted to actually build on what Kim had mentioned because I think speech recognition, Dragon is a wonderful product, but I think speech recognition over the years has improved significantly. And now when I work with students and when I work with teachers as well, some of the new products, the new products allow students to do is to integrate writing with speech recognition. So they will write, a few sentences, and then they're able to speak a few sentences, and then they go back to writing, and then they go back to speaking. So it's very much you can mix the two, and I find that's very effective for some students. And some of the new products that allow you to do that are, Google Read and Write allows students to do that, and some of the speech recognition tools that are available. As apps are also very, they're excellent in terms of speech recognition, options. So there are so many more options for speech recognition. So I'm glad that was mentioned. And another point that I wanted to bring up was in terms of technology and organization of the writing process. I work quite a bit with graphic organizers and graphic organizer tools. And regardless of the platform, I find that graphic organizers in general are a highly evidence-based practice for organization of writing. They're one of the top, I'd say, in terms of the research that's been done in writing for students with either special needs or just for writers in general. Graphic organizers or concept mapping is one of the best tools that students can use to begin the writing process. So I work quite a bit with those types of tools, technology tools, and that's available on so many different platforms for students. And again, it's also a motivational, it brings in ties in that motivational piece as well. Students are highly motivated to use these types of technologies. And I'm going to stop there. let others speak.
Yeah, that's already pretty interesting. And we'll come back to some of these ideas, but I think Roberta also has some things to share about these things, right? So I think you, yeah.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
mic on? Am I?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, sorry. Thanks.
No problem.
I just wanted to mention, I know we're talking about a lot of different types of technology here, low tech to high tech to support students. And I think it's important to keep in mind, depending on, we're talking K to 11.
Oh, bandwidth.
To the students' needs. And that it's not necessarily, one type of technology will work for every student. And there's a couple of frameworks out there. One of them is, I'll type them into the whiteboard after, and perhaps I can share some links with you, Alexandre, to put on your website. But one is called the SET framework, which is the Student Environment Task and Technology framework developed by Joy Zabala. And another one is by Marcia Shearer, and it's called Matching Person and Technology. And there's just different ways to make sure that the tool that is used by the student is really going to meet their needs, whether it be related to motivation for writing, whether it has to do with their thinking style, whether it's, perhaps they're a very visual thinker, so using those concept mapping tools. The student really has a need to express things orally to get their ideas out, so it might be using Dragon, etc. But I just wanted to put that thought out there. Thanks.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned UDL before, and I'm kind of assuming most people know something about it, but maybe you can explain it a little bit more if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I know several people that are part of this webinar today know quite a bit about Universal Design for Learning, but it's an instructional curriculum development framework that originated in architecture, where designs were done from the beginning with as many needs of the users as possible kept in mind. So rather than, say, for curriculum, doing a specific accommodation for a student or a retrofit to support a student's need, these things are taken into consideration from the beginning, and curriculum is designed with built-in, where you'll have multiple means of representing your information, you'll have multiple means of engaging your students, and multiple means of action and expression. And this is often where the writing component comes into play. So this could be where the teacher is providing a choice of the way students can express what you're hoping they're going to do, in the writing format, whether the writing be in text or the writing be in a visual format, or the expression be done orally.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds not only interesting, but while it's true that most people know a bit about it, I think there's a little bit of misconception or something like that. And I'm sure, Andrea, you have a follow-up. You were saying some things about SET as well.
Oh, no, I just wanted to mention, I'm so glad that Roberta mentioned SET, because I'm at the K to 11 level, as I mentioned, and I work with 9 school boards, essentially, and many of them are using, I'd say the majority are using SET as a framework to develop assistive technology profiles for students with special needs, and to match, effective technology tools to individual learning profiles. So I'm glad that was mentioned, because it's an excellent framework, and it's it's an evidence-based framework as well.
Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds a little bit strange for me, but I'm a bit naive. Do you see a connection or a contrast between UDL that has this idea that there's no tool for everyone in a way that and that specialized tools are for everyone or something like that? It's a little bit hard to explain for me. And the kind of assistive technology, these are tools really meant for people who have specific disabilities. Is there a conflict there? Is there a contradiction? Is there anything like that, or is it just integrated in some other way?
Yeah, was the question addressed to everyone, or sorry?
Well, to you, Andrea.
Oh, to
Yeah.
me. Okay. Sorry. You know what? I see UDL as sort of a as you know, it's really a best practice, I guess, in terms of assistive technology. And I think assistive technology has become very much akin to educational technology. Many of the assistive tools that we've used in the past that were considered assistive, such as word prediction or text to speech, are now very much in use by many people. So in that respect, I think some of the tools that we're using can be applied universally and should be applied universally. There are still assistive technology products out there that will not apply to all students, or all students will not use many of the specialized technologies. An example is JAWS software for students with visual impairments. Another example might be augmentative and alternative communication products. Those tools are still highly specialized for very specific population. That being said, many of the tools that, again, text-to-speech, speech recognition, concept mapping tools, those are all tools that I feel should be applied universally, and that's what my project is working on, essentially, to apply these, I guess, broad spectrum technology tools that will work for many students. On the other end of the spectrum, I guess, are those tools that will be used by highly specialized populations, and those will always be considered highly specialized. So I think there's a balance, and I think assistive technology is a wide spectrum. I think sometimes now we're confusing assistive with educational technologies. Can the smartboard, as an example, can an interactive whiteboard be considered assistive technology? Yes, for some students, but for the large majority of students, that will just be an educational technology. But I really think it's how we still need individualized profiles for students. We will never, we will always need the set framework, as an example, to apply technology to an individual student. But again, UDL can be used as, I guess, a framework to apply technology very broadly for many different students. So really, it's a spectrum, I guess.
Absolutely. And actually, Roberta, you have obviously things to share about UDL, including the origin. So maybe you can speak up about this a bit.
Yes, just very briefly, Universal Design for Learning came out of the work of David Rose and Ann Meyer in the United States, and their organization, which is the Center for Applied Special Education Technology, and they were doing work with students who were, quote unquote, in the margins of a K-12 classroom, and they were finding that by using different technologies, they were able to support these students, and then these technologies who were supporting these students in their learning could then be used to broaden the learning and give more access to all of the students in the classroom. And they, even though the origins may have come through a bit of the technology area, they will often say that Universal Design for Learning synonymous with technology. That's often a myth that's out there, but technology is a tool that supports it. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in.
Absolutely. And Tim, you just raised your hand, but just before, because we talked about general purpose and specialized or assistive, maybe Kim could talk a little bit about how, the tools that she knows, including Dragon Naturally Speaking, and obviously Grace could talk about that too, can fit both or either. So Kim?
Okay. So fit both or either, I'm sorry.
Between assistive and general purpose.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had the question clear. Actually, it fits seamlessly with both. Again, in the classroom, I had a lot of integration of special needs students with in combination of all levels, and everyone benefits. It's a tool, like when she said that we need to say that assistive technology is kind of becoming synonymous, it really is. Besides a few other, with Dragon Naturally Speaking, I don't see a difference. It's not just an assistive technology tool. What you do is you find out what the needs of the students are and how the voice recognition technology fits. I totally agree with the integration of the writing and the speaking. It's what you're also integrating is actually all of your reading and writing concepts that you teach, no matter if you have any technology or not. Mm-hmm. Teachers are still teaching those same concepts. You're still using, your brainstorming and your mapping, but what the voice recognition helps many students do is get their thoughts down faster, taking notes, being able to say what you're thinking about a topic, or even mapping with your voice, outlining your ideas with your voice. Or keyboard, or combination, of both. It's really just helping them get a different way of getting their information out quicker. And, even teaching computer technology and writing, and I'm talking more like keyboarding, often people would try to not really do all of their thoughts. They would try to type and edit as they went, and that actually slows down your productivity. And that's a thing, like with voice recognition, you have to reinforce all the different features it has that can help the students be more productive.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And by the way, has there been an issue where some people think that it's unfair that people would have access to speech recognition when other people don't have those needs? Even if they have access to it, maybe they feel it puts others at an advantage or something? Has there been any issue like that?
I haven't seen it seen as an advantage at all. In fact, what I have seen more often is really that we have learned to produce things a certain way. And there is a learning curve to change to the voice recognition. And even though we talk on a daily basis, if you think even how our world has gone to more texting and nonverbal communication, actually, I've seen more of a little bit of a reluctance to use the voice recognition until they realize, oh, wait, I can say my thoughts and get it down on the page. I don't have to be looking at every letter that's going on the page. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I guess it's more about things like typos, because the speech recognition will write down the correct spelling.
I see what you're saying as far as having an advantage is that the computer's actually correcting your words for you. Is that what you mean, as far as maybe it being more seen as a advantage?
Yeah, has there been discussed?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add also to that yeah, one of the this is Grace Duval. One of the biggest barriers, as Kim mentioned, is people not really understanding that it can help them, right? And that speech recognition can help them. And one of the barriers is really, a lot of people think, well, gee, I can already type, and I'm already writing, why do I need this, or how can it help me? And as we all, as we mentioned in, I think already in our intros and stuff, there are many ways, right, that it can help. It can help you think even. A lot of people, if they're stuck in front of a computer, with their both hands on a keyboard, it doesn't really help their creative process thinking sometimes. Some people actually like to, I know in some cases, they like to stand up and pace around, for example, or, just get up and stretch their leg.
Oh, I think there's a bandwidth issue.
And so in many ways it helps them think. Oh,
it's good now.
Yep. And can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and then in other ways, there's a little bit of misconception as to what speech recognition is. A lot of people, because with the advent of Siri, a lot of people think, well, all it is just I can talk to it and give it commands, and maybe it's not so accurate, right? And I think we also mentioned earlier, the accuracy, the accuracy has improved. Dragon has been around for a very long time, and the accuracy has improved dramatically over the years. And Nuance continues to do, research and technology improvements on that. And so, a lot of people are quite surprised actually at how accurate it is, and how it can adapt to different accents and different voices and different different ways that people speak, for example, and how it can be actually customized to your way of speaking to get the most accuracy, get the most accurate that you can get it to. And so I think that is one of the barriers that people have, or one of the a few of the reasons why people have been resistant to it.
Again, I'd like to just add to that. In one case of keyboard technology, why should we think that voice input should be totally accurate when if we keyboard information in, we also have mistakes? And so when people realize that when they're voice inputting, it is very accurate, but immediately when it makes a mistake, sometimes people want to react to that. Well, if I keyboard and make a mistake, what happens? And it's back to that thing of getting all of your thoughts out, not worrying about at first what's going on the screen, and then editing.
Absolutely. And Tim and Norm had asked to speak, so I'll give them the right to speak, their turn. And even if it's not that connected to this discussion about keyboarding versus voice input, I know it's within the same conversation. I think it really does apply. And by the way, since Siri was mentioned, something that's interesting about it is that the notion is the same thing for Google Voice, is that apparently part of the reason it's so interesting for those companies is that they accumulate data on what commands are being input, and then they can get more accuracy. Like for Google, it would be like which search results people are looking for, and so on. But also even the speech patterns, I think they accumulate a lot of data. The reason I care is that we're planning a lab on student data. So if we get students to use a product like this, that where the input is actually sent somewhere, including Siri. We know that it's sent to servers in Apple's servers somehow. We know that there's not that much documentation, but there are some issues about privacy, especially in Quebec. And something I just wanted to mention, because it's interesting to think about, I learned it just a couple of years ago, is that the concept of reasonable accommodations in Quebec was specifically at the start about those accommodations that are meant for people with disabilities or things like that, including accommodations for wheelchairs and so on. And as you know, if you're from Quebec, or especially have been in Quebec in the past 10 years or so, it's taken a very different tone after a while, more about cultural and even religious issues. So Tim, I know we might have deviated, but I think it still wraps up. So maybe you can bring us back to some of those other topics, please.
Sure. I was going to chime in before when we were talking about UDL and in terms of individual support versus global support. And I think what's really nice about UDL is it addresses the learner's preferences. So for example, the name of this lab is writing challenges. It's not writing disabilities. And so there might be some students who have a specific need, and they may need something like Dragon Naturally Speaking. But within the UDL sort of world, it also taps into a learner's preference. So then a learner could access something like a free technology like Google, where it's going to be good enough for what they need to do. And so what's really great there is you're offering these supports to all students. And when you sort of explore a universal accommodation, some students who may not know they would have benefited from it, they test it out, and then they do find that it's a bit of a game changer for them.
Absolutely, and it was very much on purpose. It was very purposeful for me to call it writing challenges. I try to avoid disabilities as much as I can because I get the impression that people are very sensitive to that word. I don't know if that's correct. But at the same time, there are things where it's disabling. I don't know if people have heard of the social model, but saying that the context is more disabling than being deaf or something like that.
Absolutely, and that's really UDL is you're trying to change the environment as much as possible, and I think many writing challenges we find are not due to a disability, right? You know, a second language isn't a disability. That's just the environmental context. So how can we help them catch up?
Yeah, but it is a challenge. Yeah, so second language is a challenge. It's not a disability, but you are disabled when you're in a foreign country and you don't understand the language. I think that point is well taken by most people. Norm, you're next. So you had raised your hand a while ago, but I think it's fine.
Yeah, I actually, amazingly, I think what I'm going to say is still relevant to the discussion that was going on with Dragon and a number of other things. I want to actually just go back to an article, as long as we're all dropping names, an article that was recently written by Ryan Moon about the, oh Lord, what is it called? The report, the annual report on technology. The Horizon Report. And it just seems to me, and it was a thought that I had when that came, and the more I'm listening to this discussion, the more it comes to me as well, in terms of teaching. We as teachers used to be responsible for content. And in terms of content, we had a set of information and we more or less threw it out there to our students, assumed they had a sort of set of abilities and technology, albeit a pen and a paper or even a laptop, and more or less said, you know, you're perfectly capable of doing this, and here's the information, organize it as you yourself are best capable of doing. And I think that what increasingly we're being called upon to do, because I find it interesting in that sort of hackneyed ability where we keep on saying guide on the side, sage on the stage, and we're the guide on the side. But as the guide on the side, we're increasingly being called upon to provide our students with an environment that they can learn in. And as you know, we're all talking, Grace, in terms of using this technology, but the student is not going to use the technology unless we present it to them. And if that's the way it's going to happen, we can't simply say, oh, we have all this great technology and it's out there, use it. What we have to do is we have to be familiar with the technology. We have to figure out a framework where the student is going to adapt that technology, to at least give it a try. And perhaps we have to tailor the material that we're teaching so that it lends itself in a degree to the use of the technology. And I think that gets people's backs up, where we're saying, well, what we're teaching is somehow being influenced by the technology that we select. And as teachers, it is incumbent upon us to know as much as possible about possible solutions that will help our students. I mean, before we can create a situation where our student is going to benefit, we ourselves have to be aware of the potential for different learning styles. And I really do think that in many ways that is the supreme challenge of UDL, which is to become talented enough in many technologies to be able to chart a path for that will best serve our students. And we don't necessarily make the choice for the student, but we offer a sort of limited choice that the student can hook onto. And just to get one more thing in, which is that I know that in second language, I've been fascinated and perhaps late in adopting the whole idea of scaffolded writing, where you look at and you have the technology to look at how the student has written something and perhaps see where the student's process could be involved and then make suggestions as to how the student could improve that process. And I do think that with many technologies that are out there, Google Docs certainly not being the least of them, News Activist, where you can see the drafts that the student is writing. With all of these, it really falls to us to do the kind of analysis that will be helpful to our students, and then have the knowledge of technology where we can provide the student with a solution that will best help them to master the material.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. And by the way, thanks, Christophe, for sending a link to that report about the report, Ryan Moon's report about the Horizon report. Andrea?
Yes, actually, sorry, I had a few problems with the hand raising tool, so my apologies to everybody. I just wanted to mention that when I talk to teachers about UDL and technology, I think the most important point that we can all make is that it's really about the pedagogy behind the technology. And UDL for me is not. The technology is fantastic because it allows us to carry out or contribute to a universally designed environment or framework. But I think it's, the pedagogy is so important. And that's what I start with teachers. If you're going to be using speech recognition technology with a student, what's important is that we still work on the writing process behind it. We're still talking about writing conventions and organization and student voice and all of those traits of writing that are so important. So I think that when we're looking at technology usage, I think it's the pedagogy that needs to come first. And really that, for teachers, I say there's nothing different about using speech recognition technology as an example. What you're still doing with the student is you're still working on those, that writing process, that pedagogy. When you integrate the technology, it's a bonus for the students, and the student is now able to demonstrate his or her understanding. But really, you're still working on that pedagogical process. So I think for UDL, in terms of implementation of UDL, what's most important is that the teacher is an instructional designer, and that's what is most important for teachers. Teachers need to design a learning situation and a learning environment that will work for all students, and that can be done with or without technology. The technology is a huge benefit, but I work with teachers who I would consider universal design for learning, I guess experts, and they don't even use that much technology. So it's really, I think the pedagogy, I think that's what needs to come first, and I think should come first.
Yeah, and we've done a little bit of name dropping. The one I tend to do is that my father was trained by Jean Piaget, so I'm a constructivist by osmosis. So I grew up a constructivist, and the basic principle of constructing a learning environment. It sounds so trivial in some ways, but exactly what we're talking about. And in this case, that environment includes all sorts of abilities and challenges, and it's also including about technology itself. If you have a challenge with technology, that's the point that Gabe was making just before we started today. If you have a challenge with technology itself, it might not work. So a teacher who's not at ease, who's uneasy about technology for whatever reason, even when it's about lack of self-esteem. I encountered that a lot personally. There's nothing you can do to make it work. So Grace, you had raised your hand, and we just talked about speech recognition again.
Yeah, sorry, I think I had my hand raised the whole time, but I did want to add to that and just saying that I wholeheartedly agree. That the teacher and the it has to start with the teacher, and it has to start with the administration. So speaking of dragons in particular, our greatest success is not when the individual student just goes out and buys a copy of Dragon, which is possible. They can just go on Amazon and just buy it. But the greatest success is when the organization, the teacher or, a department or, the school board or whatever, adopts that, right? And makes that makes that a part of the curriculum, puts it into their own labs, and then integrates that into the whole learning process, right? And then basically then the students are themselves are kind of naturally given that opportunity to use it. And we find that is the greatest success, because then it is it's adopted more universally, as opposed to just one student is buying it and using it, and then it's not necessarily completely integrated in with the rest of the teaching.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't see any new hand up, which I'll take the opportunity. I hope if you wanted to speak, you did get a chance somehow. Maybe I'll just give Dorothy a chance because I think it was possible to hear her, just in case. Dorothy, can you try? Um, it's a little bit sad because I think your perspective would have been very interesting. Um, But one thing I would like to do now, I really like whiteboards. So I would like to do another kind of whiteboard session brainstorming. But maybe, Kim, if you have something short, because we're getting near the end. So
Yes, I basically just wanted to say that I totally agree with the pedagogy being taught first. And technology does not have to totally be used. It's just a matter of what will benefit the students. The main thing, and I think it was Gabe, I might be wrong, but is that the teachers train the trainers. And I just wanted to mention across the United States, the teachers that attended hands-on training where they were able to work with other teachers, learn the technology and how it could be integrated was really, really helpful.
absolutely, that makes sense.
That.
Yeah, yeah. Andrea?
Oh, sorry, I having a few problems with the hand raising tool here. No, sorry, I had nothing to add to that. I agree with all of the points that were made. And again, I just wanted to get a little word in about in terms of universal design for learning, because the K to 11 sector is I find we're a little bit, I guess we weren't as further ahead with adoption as the post-secondary sector in terms of universal design, and we're still, very much at the beginning stages. But what we're finding is that I think if the pedagogy does come first and teachers see that it's not about the technology, because many teachers are uncomfortable with integration of technologies. And I always tell teachers, it's not, you don't have to be a technology expert. You have to be a pedagogical expert, which is what you are. And then, I think that's a little bit easier, and I think it's very much the case with teachers. If they need to know that their subject knowledge expertise and their pedagogical and instructional design expertise comes first, and that's what's most important.
Absolutely. And there seems to be a challenge talking about the pedagogical issues in post-secondary education. I know that in K through 11, it's probably understood that pedagogical skills might matter, but in post-secondary education, in higher education, there's a lot of talk about, oh no, you don't need pedagogy to teach CEGEP. You don't need pedagogical skills to teach university. So that's part of the challenge. Norm, a few words before we go into an activity.
Okay, just to simply add on the pedagogy front, as well, obviously pedagogy is prime, but I think that as teachers, if we're using technology, what we really have to sort of focus on is how the student internalizes the concepts that we're trying to get across, and that I just find that technology sometimes offers us as teachers other ways of structuring material that we're sort of so fixated in our traditional technology. And I'm really speaking from personal experience here. I mean, just to give a very concrete example, I was doing a distance learning situation with my class and another class, and I was just so fixated on reproducing the computer lab, whereas what I really had to do was reproduce a meeting room. And the minute that I realized that what was prime was that groups talk with groups, all of my technological issues disappeared. And that in many cases, what we really have to do, yes, the pedagogy is prime, but we really have to make sure that what we're dealing with is pedagogy and not pedagogy that is somehow influenced by traditional teaching methods. And that's all.
No. That helps a lot, and I think it's a good segue into the activity itself. Because we have 14 minutes left, less than 15, and I just want to do it a little bit, and maybe some people can wrap up. I'll try to get just a few minutes at the end to wrap up. I think Roberta, you want to speak, and maybe just afterwards. So what you see on the screen is, if you see the screen share, I'm sharing an app called Scapple. It doesn't matter which app it is, but this is something I did based on discussion with people at Centennial. Those who don't know Centennial Academy, it's not only K through 11, but also higher ed, like they have a CJET, well, a college level part. And I was talking with them about all sorts of challenges. It was a little bit hard to focus it, partly because they use UDL very specifically, so they don't think of specific challenges, but challenges that affect everyone. So I was thinking about ADHD as one, and about slow processing speed, like there are some specific people or specific times when you have a challenge like that. So I think the whiteboard that we did earlier about different challenges is a nice complement to this one. And altogether, I'll try to bring all of this together. I didn't want to prime you, so I wasn't showing it earlier. I did show it before the lab started, the lab session started, but I didn't want to prime you on this. But I think there's a number of challenges, and we're pretty clear on this. So now what I would like to do, and that's why I shared a new whiteboard, is that, and I hope I can get the right one. It doesn't matter actually, but maybe we can share just a few tools, even though we really understand that tools are not the main thing, but maybe a few tools that can help people cope with challenges. So I saw WordQ and Medialexi earlier on the other whiteboard that are kind of solutions to some challenges, but maybe if you have others. So it's one that it's not so interesting for the audio when people do this, but I think those whiteboards can help a lot. And by the way, you need to click elsewhere before it shows up. So that's part of the reason it doesn't show right away. That's actually interesting. And by the way, something about the pedagogical being first, I think it's pretty useful to even our jobs within the CJEP system, for instance, that technology is there as a context anyway. So I think it's interesting to think about that we need to be pedagogues first, but technology is there whether we like it or not. So I think that's pretty powerful. And one reason I like, I only see three right now, and all three of them were in the previous whiteboard. So, and feel free to speak up if there's one of those tools that either you've used or would like to share a few words about. And I won't go one by one. I think you can speak up just like that. And actually, Norm, I see you talking, but I can't hear you. Did you mute yourself?
Yeah, I always mute myself because I type and take notes. Now I can't. Now I can't go back to the. Now I can say I have a small one of the whiteboard. Yeah, I love. Well, particularly I love Antidote when I write in French, because what I really like about it is that it's a gentle corrector. It doesn't correct, but it does suggest, and the suggestions are the way that you learn. And White Smoke, to a degree, does the same thing. I do feel that Antidote is perhaps more effective in French than white smoke is in English, but maybe it's because I need more help in French than I need in English. I don't know. But yeah, I think those are wonderful. And I would be tempted, I sort of hesitate, and I think the reason that people aren't putting in so much technology is because in many cases we don't necessarily appreciate what technology that does other things can do in terms of enabling students. And one of the things, I mean, that this just seems to me is Google Drive. Google Drive is amazing in terms of working with students, seeing how students work. And it's a sort of, as far as I'm concerned, a gateway to analyzing particular problems that they may have, which allows you to suggest other technology to students. Because, and the thing I love about it is that you can track the history of their writing. You can see what came first, what came second, how did they add. You can regress and see things. And I would be remiss if I didn't say news activist as well, in terms of getting feedback from a very large community of students, which sometimes has more currency with your students than when you say it. It's one thing for you to make a mistake and have your teacher say, well, you know, that's, but I will never forget when I had French language students, and somebody from Gabe's class wrote a comment on one of my students' posts saying, we understand that you're second language and we understand that you're having problems, but I'm sorry, if there's a misspelled word in the title, this is never going to work. You should at least take the care to spell. And it really made a difference. I mean, in terms of the currency of making correct writing more valuable.
Absolutely. And I understand that the list of tools might not expand itself that much. So maybe that's not something that will work very well, but that's fine, you know, and we can add it to the collaborative document or something like that. There's also that. But it's probably a good opportunity to wrap up. There's 8 minutes left. So Andrea, Kim, and Roberta. And actually, Roberta, it's been a while, so that since you asked to speak, so maybe Roberta, you can go first, then Andrea and Kim.
Okay, sure. Thanks. I'll just be brief. I just wanted to mention one thing about Antidote. I know at Dawson College, two of their French teachers who are really implementing universal design for learning in some of their first level French courses have Antidote installed on all computers for all students to use. So it's done in a very UDL way, and they've had great success with doing this. The students are learning more about, you know, writing in French. And then two other quick points. I just wanted to also mention that technology as a whole can offer, often, if it's the right match for the student or for the class, more flexibility and customization over, say, you know, pen and paper format or print materials. And then just one final thing related to the UDL Chantier 3 project that I'm working on, when we were talking about post-secondary instructors and pedagogy. There'll be more results probably within the next half a year, but on barriers and facilitators that instructors experience in trying to use universal design for learning. So I could share more about that later, but just wanted to say that's in the works. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Andrea?
Yes, I just wanted to, I don't like to talk about any one technology product because, again, I think as Roberta mentioned, and many other people before her, it's not really, you know, there's so many different technology products that can be a great solution. But I really think in the K-11 sector, in the Anglophone sector at least, we're really moving forward with Google. Just because Google Drive, I think it was Norm that mentioned it, is a really, it's a universal tool in that it's, you know, in terms of the writing process, it's very collaborative, and you allow students collaborate, which is one of the competencies of the Quebec education program. That collaborative aspect is very important. So again, it's something that we're moving forward with, and the ability to differentiate or to provide students with different options with Google is really, it's growing. Again, it's in its infancy, but again, the tools that we're seeing, one of them as an example, Read and Write, is a tool developed by, it's a long-standing software product. And the tool is actually, it's quite low cost, and it's being, designed and delivered in a very universal way. So I think they're great options. I think a lot of our school boards are really, going with that Google platform because there are many options, and they see that the future is very bright for this type of platform, I guess. So I think, in that sense, when we're looking at universally designed tools, Google is really moving forward with that type of product and that perspective in mind. And
Absolutely.
that's it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Christophe's lab on cloud computing, especially about Google Drive and Office 365. I won't ask him to talk about it, but part of the issue is that there are some very tricky and even legal issues to consider when using those tools in the post-secondary education environment, partly because there's private information that might be shared, and basically you kind of need an agreement somehow, like almost a contract. But still, the tools themselves can be pretty interesting. Kim?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate. I find people's comments very interesting and right to the point. Overall, I think it's great that the group's looking at universal design tools. Our districts around our area have also really started using the Google platform, Google Docs, much more. I haven't heard too much about the legality. However, I do know that they have contracts that students sign as part of using, their technology for the schools.
Yep.
I guess.
Yep.
I don't have much more to input.
No problem.
But thank you so much.
No problem. Grace?
Sorry, I didn't really have my hand up, but I agree. I guess I should lower it, right? I do agree with Kim, though. Thank you very much for letting us participate in this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks. So there's 2 minutes left. If anyone, there are some hands that are still up, but if anyone has any parting word, that might be now. Otherwise, I think we can stop now and invite you to the next one. And I don't have a date now on purpose because it's been a challenge for me to find a time for everyone. So I'll send a doodle to all of you. And this time, I know it was a little bit overwhelming the last time. But this time I'll try to select a few specific times that are kind of more of an opportunity. So to invite all of you, and I think, as I said, the recording will be available. In this case, I don't think I'll have to edit it much because the last time it was really difficult in terms of technical issues, but I think I might actually leave it as is and just cut maybe some part at the beginning. So I'll make the recording available as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, and then other people might refer to it to get exposure. I know all of you are exposed to issues relating to those challenges, but other people aren't, and it's a little bit of a way to expose other people. Usually, it's the usual suspects who talk about those issues. But then if we get other people to talk about these, I think it will be pretty useful. So I thank you, everyone, for coming to this session. I think it's been pretty useful for most everyone involved. And I'll stay in touch to share some content, including the recording, but also some notes that have been taken and the whiteboard. Obviously, since it's a lab about writing, we really like it when people share our notes. Norm has been kind enough to share his notes from the previous time. And maybe if other people have notes to share, we'd be delighted. We can post them on our site or something like that. I think it's pretty useful. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. And thank you again for all your help.